Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second webinar of 2026. It's February. I don't know what the weather's like where you are today, but in Hastings is a very welcome day of sunshine and blue sky, which I have to say has really lifted my spirits after the prolonged wet weather we've had. And what about you, Lee? It looks like it's sunny in Shropshire
It
as
is
well.
absolutely glorious. Yeah, glorious sunshine, blue sky, a little bit cold, but nothing to moan about. Happy days.
As always, let us know where you're dialing in from today. We're being very stereotypically British today, aren't we, Lee, talking about the weather? But
It's got to be done.
we do love it. We do love it.
We've covered
Can't
the
believe
important
how
stuff
much
first.
a day of sunshine just so lifts your spirits, doesn't it?
Absolutely right.
We'll just give it a couple of minutes before we get started, just let people join. Let us know where you're dialing in from. It's always good to see how far and wide we've got the community coming to join us from today.
My chat looks slightly different. I think they've
I know, I was just thinking that.
upgraded or updated this app again.
I know. I can't see anyone's put anything in yet. I'm going to test it, see if it's working. Oh no, here we go. Bristol. Oh, I love
Very
Bristol.
good.
Bristol's a great city, isn't it? Suffolk. Oh, they're all coming in now. London. So UK based so far. Exeter, another lovely city. Oxford, another lovely city. Oh, we've got all the lovely cities today. Hi, Kate. So I think that's Kate that I know. I'm guessing I put two together. It says Catherine Malloy, but I'm thinking it might be Kate that I know. I know Kate Malloy from Suffolk, unless there's two of them. As
That's the
always, I think
trouble. Go on
I
then.
explain for those of you that are kind of seasoned webinar attendees. Unfortunately, due to a previous incident, we have to lock down the video and the mics on our webinars these days because we had an unwanted guest sharing some very unwanted material, shall we say? It's quite a funny story. We can laugh about it now, can't we? I was I wasn't
Slightly.
actually on that webinar, but poor
You
Katie,
didn't experience it, Emma. It
I
wasn't
did.
laughable at the time, I have to say. It
No,
was horrific.
it's
But
yes, yeah,
yes, it's sad, isn't it? It's so much nicer to see and hear people,
it
but
is. It is.
we have to do what we have to do.
So I think it's a couple of minutes past the hour, so let's get started. We're talking all things AI today and how we can still be people first, human centric in a world of AI, specifically with reference to internal comms. So we did one very similar to this last week, which was more of a kind of general kind of AI webinar for people working in employee experience. We looked at the different parts of the life cycle, but we felt there's such a big community when it comes to internal comms that it needed its own webinar, didn't it, Lee? Plus, we've also got
Absolutely.
a great kind of toolkit, a free sort of light version and a more in-depth version for members via the EX space that kind of goes into a lot of what we're going to be talking about today in more detail. So, Katie, I'm looking at you now, put you on the spot here. I'm guessing you're going to be able to send out at least the free version to, or a link to the free version to attendees afterwards. Is that the case?
Absolutely, yeah. What I'll do is, as we wrap up at the end, I'll put a link to that in the chat. But also, anybody that signed up through Eventbrite, which I'm assuming most of you did, will also get a copy of the recording sent out, links to the free toolkit. And if you're an EX Space member and you've come in through the EX Space, then it will all be uploaded onto the EX Space in the webinar archive with all the tools and everything you need there too.
Cool. And I can see
Fantastic.
Catherine Malloy. It's a different Kate Catherine. That's interesting. So I know two people with the same name in Suffolk. How interesting. There you go. I love this sort of stuff. Right, Lee, should we get started? Should we get it
Let's
started?
get cracking. Yeah.
Intros
Are
and
you okay to share the slides,
yeah, yeah,
Fantastic.
get that
Let's
going.
Yeah, I was going to say, with a name like Lee Smith, there's so many of us across the world. It's ridiculous. I did at one stage. I set up a Google alert on Lee Smith, and not because I've got a giant ego. I was just fascinated to see what came up, and most of them seem to be sort of criminals in the middle of the US somewhere. But we won't go into that. I should have changed my
Interesting.
name by default. Okay, so let's get cracking. Yeah, as Emma said, today isn't about turning you into an AI expert or throwing a load of new tools at you. It's about something much deeper and much more important than that, how we use AI without losing the human connections that give us as internal communicators our real value. So AI is already changing our world, whether we choose to or not. The question is whether we let it pull us into this sort of, or continue our transactional sort of message driven way of working, or whether we choose to use it to free us up to do more of the human stuff, the really impactful value added stuff. So that's what we're focusing on today. Okay, next slide, Em. So coming up in the next 60 minutes, first we'll have a quick reality check, a quick look at how AI is changing the world and why this moment matters so much for us as internal communicators. We'll look at how AI actually fits into this picture, not so much as a threat. It's something we can sort of run and hide from, or it's something we can embrace as a partner. And that's very much our philosophy. We will give you a kind of simple framework that you can use to make sense of AI and start using it on a really practical level day to day in your work. And building on that, we'll then give you a kind of 90-day reset plan, a sort of quick fire plan of action so you can start putting this stuff to use as we go. And as Emma said at the start, a lot of the ideas here are built from our book, People First Internal Communication. That was published back in December. It's not a book about AI, but it has really been triggered by AI. Suddenly we have this tool, this game changer that can take a lot of the sort of busy work of IC off us and free us up to do more value added stuff. And that's really what the book is about, how to refocus on the human beings at the heart of all this. So we'll come back to some of the themes and models and ideas from that book as we go through the session as well. Okay, so let's first have that sort of moment of reset, and why now? Why is this the big game changer for us? And in simple terms, the future of work has arrived, I guess, over the last 5 to 10 years, maybe a little longer. There's been a kind of perfect storm forming. Obviously, COVID was part of that moment where suddenly we were super important as internal communicators, and everyone wanted some of our time and focus, and they needed us more than ever. But really, we've reverted back to kind of old ways since then. But alongside that, and in response to that, partly, we've seen a real shift in employee expectations. Employees now expect a degree of freedom. They expect work to be much more on their terms than they have ever before. And they expect, critically, this what we call a consumer grade experience. So as we've been grappling with technology outside of work, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, you name it, these tools that we use day in, day out in our personal lives, they know us, they personalize, they deliver content that speaks directly to us and our habits and our likes and dislikes and interests. And we expect that same level of experience and that same ease of use in the workplace now. So this sort of gap between the sort of old school ways of working and what employees now want and desire inside and outside work has really increased. So that's one side, and the other big game changer, of course, is AI, which has come from nowhere 4 or 5 years ago to suddenly it's on our desktops, it's in our systems, in our hands, on our phones. It's suddenly everywhere, baked into tools and systems, and it's already reshaping the world of work at immense speed. So these are the two big shifts really that we've seen. So future of work has finally arrived. But it's not all about the machines, and I think this is what we've seen. And Emma and I did a huge amount of research as we pulled together the book, and we looked at some of the big thought leadership studies out there at the moment, particularly from the World Economic Forum. Their Future of Jobs report is kind of must reading for any of us in internal comms, and Microsoft's Work Trend Index. Both of those and a whole load more reports now are underlining the vital importance of what we call human-centered capabilities or human skills. These are the areas that differentiate now, and these are the areas that employers are looking for, that organisations need increasingly as AI takes hold, as AI begins to do those sort of operational and technical tasks. So it's all about being more human and more meaningful, and bringing those skills, those strengths to the table. Thanks, Em. And at the same time, if we look at our own profession, and Emma and I talk about being a stuck record. We've actually done a podcast that accompanies the book called The Stuck Record. If you're interested, you can get that now on your favorite podcast platform. And it's basically an album that accompanies our book. But The Stuck Record is basically recognizing that as a profession, we're kind of stuck on repeat. And you'll see these phrases, these statements on the screen. Leaders don't communicate effectively. We're drowning in information. How can I get a seat at the table? How can we demonstrate our value? We've heard these questions time and time again for at least 2 decades. There's nothing new here. And yet we still keep coming back to these same old questions. And what that tells us is that the models we're working to as a profession really are no longer fit for purpose. We haven't moved the dial on a lot of these things in decades. They are still the problems that we face as a profession. So we need a new model, and AI turbocharges that need for a new model more than anything. And we believe that new model is what we call people first internal communication. Thanks, Em. So we talk about our profession, I see, facing its blockbuster moment. And for those of you that remember, Blockbuster was the video and DVD rental store. It was the dominant player in its space on every high street worldwide, huge a monster of a business. And technology was slowly changing. Netflix, it actually had the opportunity to buy Netflix for peanuts, and it declined the opportunity. But Netflix was there in the background, and streaming was beginning to emerge. The tech was changing and shifting the value proposition, and Blockbuster as a business just didn't recognize that. It failed to evolve, failed to recognize that the technology was shifting what it's about. It's very purpose as an organization, and value add as an organization. And internal comms is in a similar place right now. We can see AI, it's beginning to do the things that keep us busy. It's beginning to do content incredibly well. It's beginning to do planning, strategizing. It can help leaders have it on their desktop to ask questions. It is beginning to change our world and have an impact. If we don't change, we risk irrelevance. So that's what we mean by the blockbuster moment. We've got to see what's happening with technology and respond to it and find a new source of value. And that's essentially what this is. Thanks, Em.
So I think I'm going to pick it up here, talking about the people first IC model and why that's relevant for what we're talking about, the big part of today about AI. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a history lesson here. So as Lee said, we both worked in the field of internal comms for a long time. I fell into it accidentally in like the late 90s, not really knowing what on earth it was, and have worked in internal comms in some way, size, shape, or form on and off since then, really. And I think, when I first started working in internal comms, that kind of left-hand view there, the process-led IC was the kind of dominant model. It was really about being a post box, delivering messages, cascading stuff, getting it out there. It was all about us, managing content and channels. And one of the first jobs that I had when I got my first internal comms role, no idea how I got that job because I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, but it led to wonderful things. I'm very grateful. Was setting up the first company intranet. So that's what it was all about, like managing messages. And at that point, we didn't even really think about employees, didn't think about what they might want or need. We had very little visibility of them. It was just about, top down, get it out there, process led. How are we going to get out there and what we're going to say? And then we kind of wised up pretty quickly, I think, as a profession. And we moved into kind of the expert-led internal comms approach, which is what will probably resonate to many of you now. And this was much more about really kind of dialing up our expertise in terms of, we get that we need to understand what it is we're trying to facilitate with the communication. So much more of a change management approach. And you often hear people talk about what do we need people to think, feel, and do. So suddenly we're thinking about, well, with the rational side, the emotional side, and then the behavioral change side. Now, we're still focused on the content and channels to enact all of that, absolutely. But we started to think about the people we were communicating with. We might run some audits. We might go and do some focus groups and find out what was landing, what wasn't landing. We might do some evaluation, but still very much the kind of the above the waterline, very dominant model there. But we're getting that increasing visibility of employees and their experience. Now, where we think we want to move to, what we advocate for is moving to the people first IC era, if you like, which is really thinking about internal comms as an experience. People have a communication experience at work. And as Lee said, there's this kind of perfect storm because I think for many of us, we always wanted to do much more kind of deep work underneath the surface and get to know our people, but we just did not have the time, right? I remember years ago, me and my team, when I was in-house, I spent 10 years in-house. And years ago, we came up with some employee personas. We developed them with our people. And we were super proud of these personas. I think we had about 6 to 8 personas. And they kind of made sense and they really helped to stand in the shoes of the people we were communicating with. But the problem was the day-to-day reality, we only just about kept on top of, the demands from the powers that be, let alone the idea of looking at what these different personas might require from our communication approach. So the absolute intention was there, but the way to execute that it just wasn't feasible. We just didn't have the bandwidth to do that. Now, with AI coming along, suddenly that gives us space, it gives us time, and that is a wonderful gift. So now AI can do a lot of what we used to do as expert-led internal comms. It can craft and draft, it can pull together an amazing comms plan, it can analyze sentiment, it can do a lot of the stuff that we used to kind of be famous for in previous times. Now, for some people, they might find that a little bit sort of scary, like, well, what's left for me? But actually, what we argue is that frees us up to do the real work of internal comms, which is to get really close to the end user, i.e., employees. So AI can do a lot of the heavy lifting, and underneath the service, we can now spend time really getting to know our people in the way that our colleagues and customers have been doing for many years. The customer side of the business, if they went out once a year and did some focus groups with customers, they would not have a business. They have to be absolutely insatiably curious about customers and understanding who they are and what they're all about every single day. Same with marketing, right? Marketing have to be really close to the people they're marketing to. Now, internal comms has often been quite distant from the end user, i.e. employees. So apart from the kind of tokenistic focus group or the audit now and again, but AI frees us up to do that work now, which is what I am super excited about, because I think this is where we really, really get to add the value. So people first IC is about being employee-centered or people-centered. It's an approach that prioritizes the human connection, emotional engagement over information delivery. It transforms IC to interactive, co-creating, highly personalized experience. So we're starting to get to a place where we're able to facilitate that consumer-grade comms experience inside an organization. Lee, back over to you. You on mute.
I'm back. Thank you. Never press the mute key on a live webinar. Yeah, as Emma said, we're seeing this very much as our moment and a real opportunity for us to kind of reimagine internal comms as a profession. So we're super excited about it, but I know not everyone feels that way. So Katie's going to set up quickly a little poll for us. Just to get your gut feel. How are you feeling about AI right now? Are you scared? Are you fearful of it? Are you curious? Are you excited?
What I'm really excited about with AI is that none of us are experts. We are all learning together. And I mean, even writing the book, we were kind of quite deliberately not wanting to put too much AI content in there because we knew by the time it gone to print, it would probably be out of date already. And even with the guides I talked about, the guides we wrote before, like end part of last year, Q4 last year, and already I wanted to update them. So all learning on the job together, which I think is incredibly exciting.
Yeah. It looks like everyone agrees. We're still waiting for a few to come in, but excited seems to be the dominant one, excited and curious. Not
I'm
many feeling overwhelmed, which is great.
I'm
Not
going to
many
share
that are
the
scared.
results. I'll share the results, Lee, because not everyone can see
Oh,
those.
sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, we were just waiting for a few more to come through, but I think people might be on their phones and they can't always access the poll. So I'm going to
Mm.
just share that so everyone can see. There you go. So everyone else should be able to see what you could see now, Lee.
Fantastic. That's going to make sense to people now. Good. So yeah, excited and curious seems to be the overwhelming response for most folk there, which is good to see in a similar place to Emma and I on this. So thank you. Could you re-trigger the slides, please? Yeah, there was a study in the States recently that showed I think just under a third, 31% of employees are actively sabotaging AI. So there's a real backlash, and again, it's great that we as internal communicators are excited and curious about this. I think a lot of people are, but there's also a lot of roles out there where people are very, very scared for what this is going to do and how this is going to rock their world. Even in the last 24 hours, there's Anthropic released a new tool that's a kind of legal assistant, and it's a load of the companies on the stock market have lost immense value just on the back of that one movement, that one release, which again could sort of wipe out a lot of more junior legal roles. And we're beginning to see that translate through into the workplace. Lots of graduate roles are disappearing. So there's two sides to this, and again, it's on us as communicators, perhaps being in the
Mm.
driving seat for AI to kind of push this in a positive direction and the opportunities rather than the
And I think to be
challenges.
fair, Lee, at the moment, I say we're all learning together, and this is just this brave new world stuff. We just don't know.
No,
And I mean, I was on
absolutely.
a Josh Basin webinar a couple of weeks ago where he was actually talking the opposite. He was talking up the fact that he thinks it's going to create the first time I'd heard this argument, but create more junior roles rather than
Yes.
less. Never heard that argument
Yeah.
before. So it depends who you listen to, right? So I think it's just
Yeah.
we just have to see how this plays out.
No, I think that's right. And I think that, often the case for AI right now is about driving efficiency. And I think we have to bang the drum for driving experience and driving improved experience at work on the back of this. That's
Mhm.
down to us. So yeah, we're talking about partnering with AI. Within the book, Emma and I looked at the skills that are required and how those skills and strengths required to succeed in internal comms are changing. And we present this as our sort of beta version model out there, our capability model, which really turns the previous models on their head. You'll see in the center there aren't the traditional skills of IC, the technical skills of IC are sort of to either side. But what is at the heart of this now are what we call the human superpowers: empathy, curiosity, resilience, creativity, influence, and courage. And these are the things that AI can't touch. It can't do those. Those are things that we as human beings and communicators bring to the table uniquely. What AI can do is the technical work, a lot of the technical work that's traditionally kept us busy as communicators, the writing, the planning, the strategy work there on the right, community management, measurement, reporting, analysis. You'll know from your own experiments that AI can do a lot of that stuff incredibly well already. So that is no longer the source of our value. Um, and then there's a new set of what we call strategic skills on the other side there. Human-centered design, absolutely at the center of this, a kind of toolkit that we share in the book for doing internal comms in a very human, people-centric way. Behavioral science, we've known about that for a few years. It's in some of the competency frameworks already. Systems thinking about the way the system, the organization interacts. facilitation, coaching, and the really big one at the bottom there, which hasn't featured on any of the competency frameworks to this point, is what we call AI augmented practice, which is exactly this: how we partner with AI and use AI to free us up to do more human value added stuff. So that's definitely worth a look. Thanks, Em. So hopefully building up a sense of why now and why this actually, rather than it being a real threat, and whilst it's a potentially an extinction level event, actually, if we go about this the right way and embrace it and partner with AI in the right way, this is a once in a generational opportunity for us to reshape and reboot what we do as a profession. AI isn't coming, it's here, it's here now, it's already embedded, it's in Microsoft 365, whether it's reached your organization yet or not, it will be there very, very soon. Um, and what's important is this: AI can process, it can predict, it can personalize all at incredible scale, but it can't do what we can do. It can't empathize, it can't build trust, it can't inspire people, it can't read the room, it can't build human connections. That's where we come in, and that's the real work of IC moving forward. So think of it as this shift from kind of processes or expertise to people, or expertise to becoming, we talk about moving from an expert to becoming an enabler. So let the machines make it faster, let the humans make it matter. That's really what this is about. Thanks, Em. So yeah, AI gives us the speed and the scale, but people first, I see, gives us the soul. And we talk about this partnership, and we'll sort of open this a little bit up as we talk. But if you think about those human strengths, empathy and curiosity, on one hand, context and judgment, creativity and influence, courage and ethical awareness. Those are the things that we can do as human beings. How do those then partner up and marry up with what AI is capable of? So use your empathy alongside AI's ability to see patterns in data, to analyze huge amounts of data and join the dots between different points of insight. How do we use our context and judgment alongside its scale and speed? How do we use our creativity to guide AI in the right way when it's drafting content and creating things for us? And how do we use that courage and ethical awareness alongside its kind of consistency and precision? So those are the sort of challenges that we face and the opportunities that we have. Thanks, Em.
Okay, so we're just going to share a little bit of what's in the toolkits that I mentioned before. You'll get a copy of these slides, I think. Again, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we sent a copy of the slides. I can never remember. So you'll get this as well. But just to kind of give you a flavour, and like I said, the wonderful thing is we're all experimenting, right? And even from, I think when I wrote this particular guide a few months ago, I feel like I almost want to update it already because things have moved on so quickly. But anyway, so the three areas to talk about is kind of first of all audit. So where are you today? How do you augment? How can you work smarter with AI so you can still add the value and show that you still absolutely are critical to a great comms experience in your organization? And how can you really double down on what only you can do? Okay, so there's the three areas we're going to walk through. And I'll give you some examples and some kind of some ideas to bring it to life a little bit. So this is something I actually did with a client, was did a bit of an audit with them, and it was really interesting. And again, so much of this is just about getting curious and experimenting. And this was a bit of an experiment we did together, which was just looking at their job description and just sort of asking, well, hang on a minute, what can I do? Where do I still add value with my job description? And what could AI do for me? So if you're sat there thinking, I'm not really quite sure, just copy and paste your job description or list of what you do into your preferred AI of choice, whether it's Copilot, Claude, Chat, whatever, and just ask, what could you help me out with right now and how? And what could you take off my plate? What would you still need my support with? What still remains uniquely human? And I'm pretty sure in the full guide that we've got an example of what came back with a few job descriptions. So it's a really interesting place to start. And if you've done that, let me know because I'd love to hear from you. It's fascinating just to find out, what you get back. And like I said before, the goal here isn't for us to do less. It's to create space to do the work that we've kind of dreamt about doing for years. Like if only we had time to do this, but we just don't have the bandwidth. So now we've actually got the bandwidth to do the real work of communication, in my view. So that's a really good sort of starting point. Some more ideas again in the guide for you in terms of what you could do to audit, but just a really kind of fun thing just to get you started if you haven't done that. And I've done it with quite a few clients now, and it's really fascinating. The other thing I'd say as well is that it's less for me now about AI hallucinating and more about the fact that it isn't always right, and you don't take what AI says as gospel. So you really still do need your expertise, because when I'm kind of working with AI, quite often I'll say, well, hang on, you've missed this out, or you've forgotten about that. And it'll go, oh yeah, great point, really good insight there. Thanks, Emma. So you still need to know what you're doing and know what you're talking about. And I imagine, say, if, we're writing a communications campaign for a big change program, you would be able to tell pretty quickly the comms campaign that had been written with AI, but somebody who was an IC expert versus someone who was like, oh, I can do that. I don't need to be an IC expert. You would see the difference straight away. I really believe that. And like I say, when I'm working with AI, I have to dial up my expertise and kind of challenge it and go, hang on a minute. And actually, the way that I've trained the AI that I work with, it's very good at challenging me back. It doesn't just people please with me. It will say, well, hang on a minute. We'll have some quite good debates and some good spars around stuff. So I think that's just worth thinking about as well. Um, Katie or Lee, feel free to jump in if anything comes through in the chat on any of this. So there's a whole load of stuff in the both the toolkit light and the in-depth toolkit about how you can work smarter with AI. But I'm going to pick out agents because they're kind of starting to get a lot of people talking about AI agents at the moment, and I've been sort of experimenting with them for a while. I haven't really got to a point yet where I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing, that works really well, but I can absolutely see the potential. And I think some of that is because I'm not in-house. I think if I was in-house, I'd definitely be using them a lot more. Running a small team with an agency, because I'm not in-house, there's not enough, there's not as much opportunity for me to use agents. But what we mean by agents are kind of almost like sort of other members of your team that you can get to do stuff. So I'm not going to read all of that out, but there's basically this idea of setting up agents. And if you've got Copilot, which a lot of people have, you know, now when you go to Copilot, it offers to set up an AI agent for you. You can have a play around with that. So after this call, you have a play around with some different agents in Copilot. And I have, and had some really interesting experiments, and some more successful than others. But you might want to be monitoring sentiment. You might want to be personalizing comms journeys. You might want to be sticking in your personas and saying, you're my persona content agent. I want you to make sure that the copy that we come out with works for different sorts of personas. The list is endless. There's so much opportunity here to think about how you use agents, but they're basically extra team members. Again, I'm not going to go through all this. I'm going to flash this up. So I want to get into some sort of examples, really. But how to do this. So again, this is probably out of date already, but just in terms of how you might want to do it, it depends on which AI you're using. But you kind of, first of all, you start with what's the need. So this really goes back to our whole, what we call the IC design loop of people first internal comms. So rather than jumping to solution, try to scope out the need to begin with. So what's the need? So it might be, for example, that you've identified that line managers are not communicating effectively, that your kind of channels are performing quite well, and the kind of the big picture set piece com stuff's working okay. But where it's falling down is that kind of communication, that interpersonal communication from manager to team. You see, it comes out every single survey we do. And we see that time and again. We've seen it time and again for like the last 20 odd years we've been working in internal comms, rightly, that this seems to be a continuous need in terms of communication.
Good. Yep.
So identify the need, then choose your tool. What's the role of the agent? What do you want the agent to do? What context are you going to give? What's the background? What's the context here? And then again, another big part of the design loop, the framework and tools that we share in the book are all about prototyping and testing. So rather than sitting in a darkened room and really refining everything until it's absolutely perfect, then launching it kind of, full ahead across the whole organization, The idea is to set up small little experiments, prototype things on a small scale, see how they work, and then you can refine and keep testing. And then by the time you go out wholesale, you know it's got much more likelihood of working. Integrating the systems and monitor and improve. So just a very kind of high level view of how you might do that. But I'm going to get on to some examples to sort of bring this to life a little bit. So I've pulled out this one. I actually experimented with this. So this is Pulse, an AI agent for manager comms. So what's the kind of what's the kind of need here? Well, the need here is that we want to help line managers stay connected with their teams by nudging them when gaps arise, using real-time data and personalized suggestions. So this is like a few years ago, the idea of doing this would have felt like nirvana to us in comms. Like, but we could do this. It's actually possible. Imagine if someone come along with an app to do this. We'd have bitten their arm off to implement it right at great cost probably. Now we've got agents that can do this. So just for example, working with Copilot on this, we say, right, we've got all this context, these data sources. So we've got Viva Insights, so we've got team engagement metrics, and we do team engagement metrics on a monthly basis, let's say. We've got Outlook, so we can see what people are actually doing in their calendars. We've got Teams to see what messages are going back and forth. We've got SharePoint as well. So whatever you've got available to you. And you might say, well, your Pulse to your agents, you're a digital assistant for line managers to help them improve their comms effectiveness. Your job is to monitor team behavior and engagement and nudge managers when communication drops. You suggest personalized updates, reminders, and conversation starters. So this is not about being big brother. This is not about auditing and compliance and telling people off. This is about helping managers to do this more effectively. Because most managers I meet, they want to do a good job of communicating with their teams, but they're really busy. They're getting pulled in different directions. And the idea of having an agent to help them do this better, I think most of them would go, brilliant. Where do I sign up? If obviously if communicated in the right way. So how might it work? So Pulse, our agent, might notice that a manager hasn't been able to meet with or message their team in 10 days and actually already seeing that engagement scores are starting to dip. So this is a kind of made up example, but you can see how this could translate into reality. So the context is, yeah, we checked the manager, the Pulse has checked the calendar. They've had a really busy week. They've had no time for one-to-ones. And the employee sentiment's gone down slightly. And the last team update was 2 weeks ago. So Pulse might nudge Alex and say, hey, it's been 10 days since your last team update. Engagement's dipping slightly. Here's a suggested message you could send to your team if you wanted to. So they could say, hi, team. I know it's been a hectic week or few weeks. Just wanted to check in and say, thanks for keeping things moving. Let me know if you need anything. And they could personalize it. The manager could then just click, edit and send. And that's an example of how this might work. Now, I'm not saying it's not without its issues. Of course it is, but just a kind of theoretical example to show you how this might start to work in a real kind of scenario. You can monitor sentiment. It can personalize nudges. I mean, for me, I am, even though I work in this field, I am very, very kind of in the moment busy. And sometimes I kind of come up for air and think, oh, I haven't spoken to my team for like days or, I haven't sent them a message. And the idea of having a nudge from somewhere to go, hey, Emma, I know you've been head down in writing this proposal or writing this, this output report for a client, but you haven't checked in with it. You haven't spoken to the team for like 3 or 4 days. I think, oh my goodness, it's been 3 or 4 days already. I would love this as a manager. So this is just one example, one worked example, just to get you thinking. Some examples of other agents you might use. I had a bit of a play around with Copilot, look at what sort of agents might you use in internal comms. So you might have a content agent to help wordsmith, to tone of voice your content, to analyze what content does well, doesn't do so well. What are people opening and reading? To draft posts, FAQs, looking at nuance and tone and authenticity. I absolutely use AI for content, especially when we're working with different clients as well. I make sure it's obviously all within the firewall, but it really helps us to get it right. It would have taken me hours previously, and now it's done very quickly. An insights agent, so giving you those insights. So before, of course, you want to go out to the whites of people's eyes. You want to get out into the offices or to the factories, to the front line, to the retail outlets, whatever business you work in. You want to go and speak to people. But in the interim, having AI do the insights, and with all respect, most comms people are not trained research scientists, right? So they're doing a good job, really, given the fact they've not been trained in research science. Suddenly you've got this insights agent who has been trained on research science. So they do going to do a much better job than most internal comms people because with that, with all respect to internal comms people, very few have a research science background. So suddenly you've got an insights agents who can really analyze qual better than most people just having a go at it because they've been given the job to do it. Can write great questions for surveys, etc., etc. A comms partner agent, a curator agent. So you get the idea. And these aren't four separate apps in the world of old. They're four different modes you've chosen your AI can adopt depending on how you brief it. So your job as the expert, as the human people first internal comms person, is to guide it. You still need to know your stuff, right? Again, if someone that hasn't got your background would not do anywhere near the job that you would do as internal comms pro, they would think they're doing a good job, but we would all be able to see through that straight away. So your job as the expert is to give it a really good guide, a really good brief, a really good scope to identify that need really effectively. And that's where the magic will really happen. Is that all making sense so far? We've got any questions coming up?
Just had one example from George Phillips in the chat, who's built an agent in Copilot that uses interview transcripts to then write news stories against a very specific set of criteria. So it's got a punchy intro,
Yeah,
very human-centered, emotion-led, newsy style, direct quotations, specific word count, etc. He says that it produces about kind of 60% there, and he then needs to
yeah,
do that sort of sub it and finalize it. But massive savings in time, and a
yeah,
great example of where these agents are super powerful. And you can from this you can quite easily leap a few years ahead and imagine these hybrid teams where you've got quite
yeah.
a small IC team that, but maybe, a dozen, half a dozen specialist agents that you're working with that are doing very specific tasks.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this world's changing all the time. I mean, I think even like I don't know, a year ago, I would use AI a lot more to write things like LinkedIn posts. I don't do it so much now because people don't engage with it because they could just sniff it a mile off, right? So it's great for a very short time. It's like this is brilliant, but it does help me think things through. So I think it's just changing up how you do this all the time and being
Yeah.
curious and just trying things out. But thank you, George. That's a really great example and a really great live example as well. So just some stuff here on, briefing your agent. The better brief you give it, the better results you'll get. So again, I'm not going to read through all that, it's just taken directly from the toolkit itself, but just some examples here around how you might brief it. So, you're a coach, you're a comms coach. Even that word coach, i.e., you're there to help and support, not to critique and tell off. You're there to notice when comms drops and offer emotionally intelligent nudges. Your tone is warm, human, and supportive. So this is just an example. And I attach our line manager persona and an empathy map, which is a tool we use in design thinking to help you understand what life is like for line managers, their kind of their needs, their wants, what they're seeing, hearing. So it helps the agent to kind of stand in the shoes of the people it's working with, right? So it gives them some insights, experience of line managers at work. Use these insights to steer your approach. You can see what I've done there in terms of just starting to build out how I brief the agents and try that out. And it might need a lot more, right? So um, my empathy, my curiosity, my clarity is why I get the best out of how my agent then behaves, right? So I'm not just writing a prompt here. I'm designing a partner. So it's going much deeper than just kind of, the whole prompt engineering we talked about sort of 3 or 4 years ago with AI. We're going much deeper here. This is why we need our expertise. This is why we need those superpowers that Lee mentioned earlier. We need to be empathic. We need to understand what's it feel like for line managers. We need to be curious about their reality. And we need to get really clear on the problem we're trying to solve. When we're clear on all that, we dial up those human skills, then guess what? We get loads more out of AI. Um, so amplify, step 3 is about kind of how we do more of what's uniquely human. So this is about how we can reinvest our time. How do we use that space that AI has given back to really deepen the human elements of communication? So again, this is about really dialing up those superpowers. So for example, empathy, how this shows up, is listening, sensing, connecting, and it matters because it builds trust and belonging. So this is like I say, there's a big debate about whether AI will ever be able to be empathic or not, and I'm not going to go there today because it's this whole Brave New World stuff. But as a human, right, I can walk into a room and I can pick up on kind of unspoken body language. I can pick up on just a vibe. I can pick up on. I'm just sensing something isn't feeling quite right here. I can pick up on energy in a room. When I go to work with a new client, the minute I walk into the reception, I can pick up on a lot about that culture and that first interaction. It's not what anyone has said. It's just a kind of an underlying sort of interpersonal, unspoken sort of, comm signals that are coming back to me. AI can't do that yet. I can get curious about that and creative about that. So there are still many areas where we absolutely need to amplify what we do really well. And as I said before, even with that briefing an agent, you can see how the superpowers really help us to get the most out of the tech because we can brief it in a really human way. So again, I'm not going to read through all that, just a kind of a screen share from what's in the toolkit, but gets you really thinking about how we can do more of what's uniquely human. Working with AI responsibly. So people first guardrails. This is just a beta version and something we're actually building out. Thinking about building out is like, what are the principles? And again, I've worked with a number of different clients where we've been doing this, and it's very unique compared to, well, unique depending on their kind of personal or their sort of like their corporate culture, what they're all about as a business. So if you're, for example, working in financial services, you've got to have way more strict guardrails than if you're working in other sorts of organizations. But just as a starter for 10, what we've put here are some of the kind of ideas we've been playing around with. How do you work with AI responsibly? So, and this is changing every single day, right? So, talked recently about, this brave new world of artificial general intelligence, which is kind of the big race at the moment with the tech companies is to get there first, because this is where AI will not need human input to think for itself. It'll become genuinely intelligent of its own volition. And this is kind of genuine brave new world stuff. And there's different kind of scenarios about when that happen. Is it going to be sooner in the sort of next 5 years or longer, like 20, 30 years? But it's going to be the biggest game changer we've ever known in our lifetime when that happens. And the company that gets there first, they will rule because everything else will follow from that. So it's just good to be thinking about how we build some guardrails now around how we use AI responsibly. So, for example, people first always is one principle that we came up with. So we're not using AI to monitor or manipulate. We're using how can we make work better for people. Be open when AI tools are used. So transparency builds trust. In the same way we kind of will call out other things. So yeah, AI was used to help me do this or build this. Keep a human in the loop at all times. Have checkpoints always. Data with dignity. So you've got to be really careful from a GDPR point of view, etc. What can we access? What can't we access? What can we share? What can't we share? Really think about that. Bias is a big one. So we know there are biases within AI because it's been built on what was already out there. So you've got to be really on it and checking for unintended biases around language, gender, etc. Experiment safely. So do that prototyping piece I talked about. Start small, test in low risk areas, get feedback before scaling, and keep learning. So the AI landscape changes really quickly. So, make continuous learning. You should be doing something with AI. It should be researching it and learning from it every week, in my opinion. And even to add to this, they came up with this a few months ago, but I would add to this now, a lot of the sort of latest research is looking at, and I did a blog about this recently, looking at how your background, your attachment approach, your attachment kind of position. So whether you had a very sort of attachment positive upbringing or not can affect how you then interact with AI. So a lot of people are using AI as coaches, as therapists, as friends even, right? Those people that have a very strong attachment background, that's not a problem. But some recent research has shown that people who perhaps have had a tougher upbringing through no fault of their own and are using AI as a friend, as a therapist, as a coach, are experiencing greater mental health issues as a result of that. And that's quite a big red flag. Now, when you think about that in the workplace, that opens up a whole Pandora's box of health and safety and well-being. Like, how do we use AI effectively in the workplace? If we're responsible for well-being at work, we've got to think about that. So I haven't got the answer, right? But that's probably that's going to be a future principle in terms of how we think about those sorts of issues or those sorts of red flags that could create problems down the line. Goes back to our people first always. We want this to make work better for people. And if by some people in an organization using AI, it's actually compounding mental health problems, that's not helping. So how do we overcome that? So just something to think about, really. So 90-day reset plan. So just very quickly. So first of all, define your focus. So think about where AI could give you some time back or spark some creativity. Stick your job spec or your task list for this week or your to-do list or your 3-month plan into AI and say, where can you help me? And then think about committing to paper or online over the next 90 days. I will experiment with AI to dot dot dot. Maybe create an agent, whatever it might be, but commit to something. Keep it simple. One focus beats 10 intentions. So I'm terrible for that. I have like so many ideas and I end up doing none of it. So just keep it simple for now. Set your intention. How will this experiment make communication more people first? How will it improve communication? Will it help you listen more? Will it design richer comms experiences? Will it coach leaders with empathy? What's the intention here? What are you trying to do? What's your why? I'm doing this because I want to do X, Y, or Z, or it will create more space for. So it's a purpose rather than a performance target. Choose one superpower to amplify. So are you going to kind of dig into creativity or curiosity or empathy? What small habit could strengthen this? And then the learning loop. So just keep on top of this. Just each month, take 10 minutes to reflect on the success, the frustration, the insights, and then share it with your peers. Because I said we're all learning together. And I learn like every week from other people who are experimenting in this area. And they'll go, have you tried this? I'll be like, no, I haven't heard of that. Have you read this report? Oh, no, I haven't come across that. And I'll share with them where I'm at because there's so much going on that we can't all keep on top of it individually. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts here. And the more we collaborate and share our experiments, share our reading, share our learning, the greater we will be for that. So I really believe in collaboration is going to be critical as we build our expertise and our ways of working when it comes to AI. So really urge you to do that. And AI is the end of internal comms. It's the next great chapter. And I think what's really exciting here is that you or we get to write this. As I said, we are all learning together. So I'm super duper excited about that. So I would love to hear what you're doing and the experiments that you are currently playing around with. A little bit of it can't end without a sales pitch, can you? So a little bit of a sales pitch here. If you haven't got a copy of the book, getting really great feedback on it. I think we've still got a free chapter download as well. Katie will remind me on that. So got some really good feedback on it. If you have got it, please, I know everyone says this, but please leave an Amazon review because it does really make a massive difference from an AI point of view, an algorithm point of view. It just gets in front of more people. So if you have got it and you've got time to leave an Amazon review, we would love you forever. So please do that. And if you're not already a member of the EX space, then sign up today. What are you waiting for? There's a QR code there. I'm going to stop sharing now, see if we've got any comments or questions coming through. We've got a few minutes left, so we can just pick those up now.
Just the one question. I think the rest were just sort of reflections on what's been said and general agreement. Question here that says, what do you think this means for entry-level jobs? I'm concerned what this will mean for young people. How will they learn if work's being done more by AI?
It's the
Shall I
million
give
dollar question, isn't it?
do you want to go first or shall I go first, Lee? I don't mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's the question on everyone's lips, and it's the kind of big unknown at the moment. I think, already there's sort of warning signs of data. One report I saw from the US last year, which looked at kind of roles in finance and admin, entry graduate level roles in finance and admin dropping about 50% or thereabouts year on year. A lot of people putting that down to AI. So already we're beginning to see the impacts of that, but it's a fast moving thing. And, I think every profession out there, we talked earlier about the legal profession, is, every profession scratching their heads thinking, what do we do? What does this mean for our future? The same as we are as internal communicators. If we don't change, if all we're about is content and technical stuff, the stuff that AI can do, then absolutely we'll be redundant, but we need to reinvent our roles.
I think it's incredibly short-sighted for firms to go, oh great, we could just replace all of our entry level. Because where's that talent pipeline, right? So yeah, okay, so here today, great, AI can do some of that. What happens in 10 years' time when those people who'll be developing their expertise, learning their craft,
Mm,
they won't be there, right? Now, you
no.
might say, well, let's hope, fingers crossed, that by that time AI can do all of this. It might not, right? So I always say follow, well, I always say this, but a great quote, follow the herd and do the opposite. Those companies that continue to invest in entry level, they're the ones that will absolutely win because they'll be developing their skills, their expertise. And let's face it, as you kind of grow and develop through your career, it isn't just about a technical side. It's about the emotional intelligence. It's about learning how to manage people, get the best out of people. It's about learning how to operate in politically difficult environments. The expertise actually is one tiny part of it, right? So I think it would be incredibly short-sighted, and I can't imagine many savvy businesses thinking, "Oh, that's a good idea," because any kind of scenario planning would tell you pretty quickly. You fast forward 10 years and you've got no one filling your talent pipeline. And what do you
Yeah.
do then as a business? Because at the end of the day, most businesses do rely on people. Even with the great tech coming in, we still need people to do stuff. So I think that'd be very
I
short-sighted. So I'm
think,
not
yeah,
worried
I
about
mean,
it.
I think the nature of the roles will change, Em, but what you said there, it's those soft skills, it's those human strengths that we talked about, the superpowers as we call them, that will be more and more important. And that, that for graduates, that's often been the missing piece, those sort of soft skills, that real world experience. And actually, that's probably where we need to focus time and energy in this world of AI. It's less about technical skill and more about how we operate as humans. So
Yeah,
I'm
I'm quite
agreed.
hopeful with my optimistic mindset. And this is what Josh was saying, who was a fan of his. Unfortunately, his stuff's very locked down behind paywalls. So I didn't even get a chance to see this. Well, he put the slides up on the screen, but he didn't share them afterwards. So I can't really quote anything, because I don't have it to hand. But his view is very much, this idea of actually it's not as scary a thing as we think, and that he feels they'll be creating more jobs. So that
Yeah,
was his view.
it's got to play out, hasn't it? It's very early days still. Um, I should say as well, I think there is still a big discount offer on with Kogan Page. So I've dropped that in. I think it finishes today, but if you're interested in the book, you can get 40% off for today only. I dropped the link in to the chat earlier. I also dropped in the Institute of Internal Comms AI ethics guidelines.
Yeah.
The IOIC has done some great work around AI guardrails, so take a look at that. That's super powerful as well. And Katie, I see, has just dropped in the link for the mini guide that supports everything we talked about today.
Great. That's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We are just coming up to the hour, so good time to kind of close at the webinar. Unless there are any other questions that I haven't seen. Katie, let me know if there's anything else coming through.
Nothing else coming through. But obviously, if you think of something further down the line, drop us an email. We'll be happy to get back to you.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us, and we'll follow up with all the
Thank you,
resources.
everyone.
And enjoy the rest of your, what I don't know what day, it's Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day, wherever
Thank you
you
very
are.
much.
Yes.
Cheers. Bye.